Welcome to the Leslie Hawkins podcast. Each week, my guest and I discuss one pivotal moment in their life, what they learned from it, and their words of wisdom. She built a jewelry brand from passion and purpose, but the business began to stall. Then, a cancer diagnosis, followed quickly by the arrival of a global pandemic. Everything changed. What began as a moment of crisis became a powerful reset, a chance to move closer to family, refocus on what truly mattered, and rebuild with intention. While others closed their doors, she doubled down, and in doing so, built more than a business. She created a movement, a values-driven brand empowering women and leaving a legacy. Welcome to another episode of the Leslie Hawkins podcast. I'm so glad that you are here. Please welcome my guest, which is Rachel Mielke. So Rachel is an entrepreneur and a philanthropist. She is the CEO and founder of Hilberg & Berk Jewelry. Yes, you got to check out the jewelry. It's a jewelry brand that actually has 15 stores across the country. But I have to be honest with you, it is more than just a brand. Because 1% of their annual sales actually is donated to help women's initiatives right across the country. They are fully embedded in helping all of these communities in which they have stores. And more than that, they're also national recognition. So they're national partners with Dress for Success Canada. They are the jewelry partner of the Canadian Olympic team, and also in their second season of being involved with the PWHL, which is the Professional Women's Hockey League, and business is booming. So, Rachel, I am so glad that you are here.
Thrilled to be here.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course.
So you and I met in 2018, 7 years ago now, when we were at the Retail Council of Canada at an event, and ironically we were speaking about women in leadership on stage at one of these workshops. So our paths have crossed a few times.
Yes.
Which is
luckily.
Which is amazing. So this podcast is all anchored on that one question, which is, what is one pivotal moment in your life? And the reason I chose that is because I think that there is amazing stories out there in the world. And when you're going through a pivotal moment, no matter how big or small, and the multitudes of pivotal moments that we all have in our life, that there can be a sense of, I'm the only one. I'm the only one that's ever experienced this. And in actual fact, I think there's great value in sharing stories. And I know you have an incredible story to share with us today. So let me ask you, what is that one pivotal moment in your life?
Yeah, so if I think about sort of a turning point where my life was going a certain direction, and then it began to pivot based on something that happened, that would have been in 2020. So kind of a culmination of things were going on. I had been experiencing some growth challenges in Hilberg & Berk. We were, for the first time, we had for 7 years, more than doubled our business year over year for 7 years in a row. And we were finally at the point where, you get to a point where you're like $10-15 million in sales. And what got you to that point does not get you beyond that point. And we were starting to experience some of those growth pains. So that was happening. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And it was sort of unexpected, and I did not see that coming. And then a few weeks after that, COVID hit, and we had to close all of our stores. And I wasn't sure if I was preparing for bankruptcy or what was coming next through COVID. So it was this culmination of many things happening at the same time that certainly did feel like, I was very alone going through this and navigating this. And it was a time when everyone in the world felt very lonely. And although that was an incredibly challenging year in my life, I look back on what came out of that as a result of the cancer diagnosis itself was a moment to just stop and sort of take stock of my life and how I wanted to live it, and ask myself, was I really living my life exactly how I wanted to?
Yes.
And make some changes like almost immediately after that of like, you know, where we live, were we close by family, making the choice to move closer to family, to raise our children in a different way, and just really make sure I was realigning the way I wanted to live to my values and what was really most important to me. Right. So I look back on that time and I'm like grateful for what came out of it, and you know, the opportunity to just reevaluate and make sure that I'm like living my life in true alignment to what matters most to me.
Okay, that's a lot happening. So talk us through finding out that you had cancer. It's nowhere on your radar.
Yeah.
And how did you know? Does it just happen that you just went in for a random test, or was there symptoms that you recognized? Was there something that stopped you in your tracks to say something's not quite right?
So, you know, 2018, 2019, I was feeling pretty exhausted and burnt out, and thought I was just burnt out, but also just not feeling great. So I started going to my doctor and, you know, having different tests done and blood work done, and they couldn't uncover anything. And then I remember going into my doctor's office, and my regular doctor wasn't there. I had to see a locum, and that doctor like really dug in, and she asked me like a whole bunch of questions, sent me for a really extensive lab panel, and she asked, when was your last PAP? And I thought my last PAP had been in the last 3 years, because usually you have a PAP like when you're pregnant and when you have a child.
Yes.
And so there was a little bit of like, you know, did I have one then? They couldn't find the record. And so that was sort of like the start of, you know, really, you know, sort of recognizing that you might think something had happened, you know, and you know, the process that was supposed to have happened when you have a child maybe didn't happen. And then you know, she sent me for a PAP, and then it came back abnormal, and that was at the beginning of 2019. And so she's like, don't worry, it's like really common. It was my first abnormal PAP. And then you know, like eventually I got sent to a specialist and then had more tests, and it wasn't until January of 2020, so almost a year later, and because it was so slow, to me that signaled, well, it's obviously not serious.
Right.
You know, there's no way it could be something serious if it's taking this long.
Totally.
So to get the diagnosis was pretty surprising, because I thought, you know, if this was something serious, like I would be finding out faster.
Right.
But that's not quite how it works sometimes. So it really was a eye-opening experience to, you know, like really advocate, really ask more questions, get a full understanding of your medical history. Make sure you're taking a look at that and you know, you know, what actually has happened.
Yes.
And make sure that you're advocating, asking lots of questions.
It's kind of like full elbows out. You need to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that you did that step, because so many women, I will speak for myself, we're like, I'm just not feeling great. I'm not feeling quite right. We just sweep it under the carpet and we just move on, right? We're super women. We can handle everything, right? And particularly somebody like you who is so busy, you're building a massive, not just business, but an entire movement, quite frankly, with your brand. It's quite amazing. So I assume you're doing well.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the gifts out of that experience has taught me how to better navigate my own health journey, how to advocate for myself, you know, how to stay on top of it, you know, and just like I've kind of taken it very seriously at a different level. But, you know, if there's one thing that I've learned out of it that, you know, a message that I'd like to share is, I learned that so many women aren't taking advantage of just going and getting their pap smear on a regular basis. In Saskatchewan in particular, where I was diagnosed, I think less than 40% of eligible women actually get their pap. And I also learned that there's a pretty staggering rate of advanced cervical cancer cases in the province. And it's not just a Saskatchewan problem. I know it happens across the country, but it's a really big problem in Saskatchewan. So, you know, that kind of led me on a journey of, well, why? Why is this very like curable cancer, a cancer that can be detected even before you have it? Why are people dying from it? and why are a lot of women dying from it? And it actually led me down a journey to become involved with a program out of Saskatoon, Women Leading Philanthropy, that funds research projects and specifically women's health research projects, and fundraised for that, and started off like doing a lot of trials on different women's health related issues. I was a part of that group for 6 years, and it's eye-opening how underfunded women's health really is.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Well, I am glad that you're doing well. I'm glad that your health is back on track. And so part of this pivotal moment was also you moving and moving closer to family, and you left your home base in Saskatchewan. You were in Regina, I believe.
Yeah.
And you moved west, as far west as you could go.
We moved to Vancouver Island.
Okay.
Yeah, and we went from, I had, my head office was based in Regina. That's where I started the brand from.
Yes.
The head office is still there.
Okay.
But we made the decision that the professional team in our company would go remote.
Okay.
And in many ways, there was like, that was a big opportunity through COVID, because we were sort of like challenged to bring talent and experience that we needed in Hilbergenburg to Saskatchewan to get people to move there.
Yes.
So going remote and starting to look for talent across the country opened up such an amazing opportunity to bring experience into the business that we had never had before, and really allowed us to, through COVID, really start scaling beyond where we were, which was, kind of an exciting journey for us. During a time that was pretty challenging. So during a time where lots of people were sort of recoiling and questioning retail, we doubled down and we went hard on finding new locations and opening new stores and renovating all of our store network and rolling out a whole new brand identity and store experience. So I think people thought we were a little bit nuts to do that, but it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah, you defied the pattern. And if you listen to media during COVID, it was the death of retail. Like retail is never going to come back. And in actual fact, the brands that are winning in retail now are those that leaned in hard and said, no, we're not going anywhere. And actually, consumers have come back to retail in a big way. So for those that don't know Hilbergenburg as well, I would love if you would share the story of how you have built this incredible brand with so much, like you've got so many great collections of product. Every time I go into the store, which is quite often, there's always something new. So if you could just share the story, that would be great.
Yeah, so, I don't have a jewelry background. And when I started making jewelry in my late teens, early 20s, you didn't really have access to YouTube. So I started learning, I taught myself and started learning techniques on how to make jewelry. And I absolutely fell in love with the industry, with the creative process, and really, making like more high-end pieces for myself, pieces that I had never had before. It made me, I loved that experience, that feeling that you get when you put something that just feels special on. It's the first time that I ever had the opportunity to have pieces that, had freshwater pearls or sterling silver when I started making pieces for myself. There wasn't really the opportunity to have like nicer things like that in Regina. There just wasn't the stores, and I just didn't have access to it because of my own financial situation, economic situation growing up. I had never really had much nice jewelry. So, when I started, there was sort of this culmination of like my passion for creativity coming together with also, the ability to make something and experience beautiful accessories that I was really passionate about. And then I experienced how other women felt when they wore the product, and I saw that same sort of excitement and sparkle come out of other women, and it was just like I was hooked. It was something that I absolutely wanted to do. And when I was starting Hilbergenburg, there was this group of women in Regina that were really instrumental in inspiring me to think beyond just setting up a business for economic purposes. They were so passionate about how do you support the community, how do you set your mind on an audacious goal and go for it. And they showed me that it was possible to, fundraise millions of dollars for the medical equipment that we needed in the province, specifically for women. And I really saw through involvements with them and some of the initiatives that they did that we could use jewelry for such a great cause for fundraising. And that was a little bit of a seed planted for wanting to do something more with the brand, and what ultimately turned into our commitment to 1% for women.
Yes.
And our ability over the years to contribute millions of dollars in cash and product to organizations like Dress for Success.
Yes.
And get involved with the PWHL and really focus on keeping women and young girls in sport. That's kind of where it all started, was seeing women doing it and passionate about doing it, and seeing that it was possible to do that.
Oh, so good. And now, you were interested in design, but do you have a design background?
I actually have a business background.
Okay.
But I think that there's something in my lineage that really kind of set the stage for wanting to get into fashion. So I think that goes back to my grandmother and my aunties. So my grandmother and my aunties and my dad all grew up in a really, really small town in southern Saskatchewan, population 25. Dusty farm town.
Okay.
My grandma ran the general store. My grandfather was a blacksmith. And despite growing up in this very unlikely scenario of fashion, my grandmother was my original fashionista. She would bring Vogue magazine into the little store that she ran, and she would, let my aunties pick out their favorite dresses, and she would sew them. And I have photos of my aunties being these incredible fashion icons, and they went on to just live that life. So when I was growing up, I looked at my aunties, and they would fly to New York and get all of these beautiful outfits, and I would go to their house and walk through their closets and just see their incredible accessories and shoes and YSL suits. And it was something that was so foreign to me, in my childhood and growing up, and yet something resonated so deeply with me about the ability to express yourself through fashion and feel like the truest version of yourself by being able to just show up joyfully and wear what you want to wear.
Oh, so good. And so the name Hillberg&Berk, is that from your grandmother?
It's actually my great-grandmother.
Okay.
On the other side of the family, my great-grandmother was probably the most joyful person in my life and my family. And I just loved that how she viewed life, even though her life was not easy, she just viewed it through a very optimistic lens. And every time I was around her, I just felt so happy. And she just exuded joy. So I wanted to name the business after her and really bring that feeling into the company.
That's incredible. That's so good. I love it. And so you started making jewelry. Was there a moment where you said, oh, actually, not only am I onto something for myself and maybe for my community, but this could be big?
There definitely was that moment.
Okay.
So I think, at first I started making jewelry and I was passionate about the process and I loved the product. But at first I don't think I really realized what it could turn into, and had been just making jewelry as a little bit of a side hobby off the side of my desk while I was working out of university. And it was a girlfriend of mine that was like, you really should do this as a business. And I knew I wanted to start a company, but it just felt really like a fashion-based business from Regina feels like an unlikely, an unlikely story. She was like, just try it. I'm organizing this conference, come and set up a booth. So that was the catalyst to, in 2006, kind of launch my first brand, which eventually evolved into Hillberg&Berk. And so, I created a brand and created a website, a little collection, and I went and set up a table at that show. And it was a 3-day, women's focused convention for nurses. And I walked away from that going, holy smokes, this has legs, and the product resonated. We sold out of most of the inventory. We were busy with orders for the next several weeks. And I realized, there is something here. And, over the course of the next couple of years, I realized the way that I was approaching it was pretty different than how jewelry was being delivered in the market currently. That I obviously was approaching it from a female perspective and lens, and had a different perspective on how to run the business, how to scale the business. And that was not happening back then, 2005 and 2006. And so it got me really excited for the possibilities. But this was really kind of before really the time of social media. Things were just getting started. So it was not quite as easy, and I say easy like carefully,
Yes,
but you know, you
yes.
couldn't just launch a brand and get a million eyes on it the next day.
Yes, right.
It was, you know, it was a different approach.
Right.
So I feel like fortunate that I had, you know, the path that I did to get to the brand exposure that we were able to get early days. Because it's quite different now to be able
Yes.
to launch a brand and potentially get eyes in a different way.
In a different way. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so you started out, and when did you open your first retail store?
Yeah, so a little bit of a backstory to that. So in 2008, I won a Dragon's Den, and I got a venture
Yes.
capital deal. And at that point, we had a web store, but very little sales coming out of our web store in 2007, 2008. And we were mainly growing the business through wholesale partnerships.
Yes.
So selling through other stores. After the Dragon's Den deal, like my growth focus and strategy was I just need to open up like hundreds of doors across North America.
Right.
So I took the majority of that capital and invested it in like kind of the best jewelry trade show I could go to in New York. And went down, and it was January 2009, and I was just so excited about growth and potential, and almost no one attended that show.
Oh.
And we wrote 2 orders, and they got canceled after the show.
Oh.
So we walked away from that show spending, you know, a huge chunk of the
Yes.
venture capital, and it was a huge failure. And that moment really made me take stock and reevaluate, because it was sort of a moment where I spent all this venture capital,
Yes.
I have this business partner expecting growth, and I failed. You know, should I go on, or should I pack it up because I don't know what I'm doing? You know, and when I really just stopped and I asked myself this question often over the years is what's actually working? Like, what's going well? Not what I think needs to work or what I want to work.
Right.
What's actually working? And when I asked myself that question, and then I really looked critically across our business, well, we had this incredible community in Regina that supported the brand.
Yes.
And was knocking on our door every day to come and shop with us. So we were in this like, you know, 110-year-old character home in downtown Regina. You know, our like, you know, our team and our sales force, but it wasn't a retail store.
Yeah.
But yet people were coming every single day wanting to shop from us. And so the most obvious path to growth was, you know, staring us in the face. And it was that, you know, experience of
Yes.
failing that opened my eyes to, hey, this is working. Why don't we just open a small store in this building? And so that led us to opening our first store in 2011. And we tripled our business in 1 year because that was it. That, you know, our store is 400 square feet and it did $2 million in the first year.
What?
Yeah. And so it totally changed our business overnight.
That's incredible.
And we realized, like, we need to own our relationship with our customer. We have a special magic at Hillberg & Berk that just can't be conveyed in the same way through partners.
Yes.
And we just need to lead into this. So then we opened our second store and our third store, and that's led us to where we are today.
That's incredible. And now I am biased, I will tell you, because I love going to Hillberg & Berk. And the one thing I find in the store is your staff. I don't know where you find them, but they're so engaged, they're so passionate, and they absolutely exude your brand. And I mean, I've been on the side of retail. It's hard to find really top talent. And so whatever you're doing in training your staff, just keep doing that, because it absolutely is a game changer.
It means the world that you say that, because my philosophy is our whole business is people. And without the best people who are aligned to our values and care deeply about what we're doing, like,
Yes.
we won't succeed. So we have a huge emphasis on finding the right values aligned people
Yes.
who care what we're doing and who are passionate about the mission that we have beyond just creating product. So far we've been incredibly lucky in finding phenomenal people. We had a like a retail sort of celebration and summit a couple of months ago, and we had, you know, 13 people who celebrated 10 years with the business. Well, the business isn't even that old, you know, so
good.
you know, people come and they stay.
Yes.
They find their home, and they get really excited about what we're doing. I think because a lot of what we're doing is quite different than what's being done out there.
It's very different. The other thing that's really different is I remember when you were opening a store here in my neighborhood, and your first question was, tell me about what's happening in your neighborhood and what women's programs are out there, what charities, who's in it, like everything you wanted to know about the community. And it wasn't from a business sense. You weren't asking for like, where can I find people to spend more money? It was, how can I help your community? And you've done that across the country. So I know that philanthropy has been deeply ingrained in you, and it is one of your core values. But how did you bring that into business? Because it's so unique, right? And particularly when you bring in a venture capitalist, I have to imagine that they're looking at the bottom line as well. Like, it's a bit about profitability and making their money. And so how does philanthropy play into the everyday workings of Hilberg and Burke?
I think a big part of it was I didn't bring it in. It was there from the beginning.
Okay.
And I think for whatever reason, for the values that I was raised with, the family that I grew up in, it was never about making money. That's not what drives me day in and day out. Maybe I need a little bit more of that in my life. But it's about what difference can you make? You know, like at the end of the day, I want to look back and say, not how much money did I make, how many products did I sell? Like, I think that will be the last thing I care about. It's like, did I do something meaningful with the time that I had?
Yes.
You know, and kind of navigating cancer and looking your own mortality in the eyes just really reinforced. You know, like, I want to look back at the end of the day and know that I spent my time and we use this business as a tool to do something that actually matters.
Yes. And you're doing exactly that. I mean, the work that you do with Dress for Success, so they're a national program, but for those that don't know much about your involvement with Dress for Success, I'd love you to share about that.
Yeah, and maybe I'll share why Dress for
Yes.
Success. So, you know, we focus a lot on how can we support women, how can we support women's empowerment, and without economic independence, it's pretty challenging, you know, to feel empowered as a woman. And to me, that's one of the biggest things that needs to happen. Women need to be like in charge of their own destiny financially. And so to me, Dress for Success is a program that just absolutely resonates with me, is for a lot of women in many different, you know, scenarios leading up to that point of coming to Dress for Success, are trying to take back their independence and their ability to guide their own destiny. And Dress for Success is the first step of, and it's an organization so much beyond just the suiting, which is, you know, what they're known for, but they give women that kind of like first like step into confidence and independence. And a big part of it comes through that suiting program, where for the first time they get to feel like they're wearing something that really fits them and looks great on them and has been styled by an expert. And at the end they get their, you know, beautiful Hilberg and Burke jewelry when they complete their suiting program. So, you know, like, to me, that program just really is a catalyst for so many women across the country to take that first step towards gaining financial independence.
Right. And with that suiting program, they get your sparkle earrings?
Yeah, we send a variety of products actually.
Okay.
Sparkle is one of the things that they receive, but we give them a whole little set to complete their ensemble.
Yes.
And every woman that goes through that program, so last year in Canada, I believe there was about 8,000 women get Hilberg and Burke to complete their suiting program.
That's so good. It's an amazing program. And you're also involved on the board of directors, I believe.
Yes, I do sit on the board of directors for the foundation. Yeah.
That's excellent. Now, you've also expanded into involvement with the Canadian Olympic team, into the PWHL, and so I'm sure you're not stopping there. But what is in the future for Hilberg and Burke?
Yeah, so I'll kind of step back and talk a little bit about why sport.
Yes.
We began to notice probably a decade ago that female athletes were wearing our product, and not just wearing our product, but they were competing in our product. They were going to world championships and competing in our products. And then we started to build relationships with athletes like Natalie Spooner, you know, where she's like, our team wants to wear like red sparkle to like this, you know, this world championship game. Can you send it to us? And we did, and they wore it. And so the you know, that relationship kind of developed really organically as something that we just really noticed, that I think the product just helps when you're, you know, when you're in a uniform or you're in like, you know, whatever.
Yes.
You can express yourself as much as you want to.
Yes.
Our product just like shone through and really helped people to express themselves. And so it started organically, and then we really sort of realized you know, I guess I started to learn about the power of keeping young women in sport and you know, like women in executive roles, how like, you know, 90 some percent of those women have played sports in their adolescence. It's critically important to building confidence and resilience and the skills that you need as a woman to navigate your life. So then it was just a natural fit to be able to begin supporting organizations like Girls Forward, which through our International Women's Campaign this past year, we supported, so, you know, all focused on keeping women and girls in sport through adolescence. And then from there, the partnership with the PWHL, we were so excited to see that league just like absolutely flourish, and so excited to sign on as a partner and to develop the collection in collaboration with the PWHL. And what a exciting partnership that has been, and to watch that come to life. And then, you know, the opportunity with Team Canada and the Canadian Olympic Committee came along, and it just felt right. The time felt right, and the partnership felt right, and we couldn't be more excited to be creating a collection that, you know, we'll see our athletes wearing in the upcoming Olympics, and we're a partner for 4 years, so we'll be, you know, selling this collection for the next couple of years.
That's amazing. And I did, because I obviously signed up for the newsletter, there is heart-shaped red earrings. I was like, oh yes, okay.
Yeah, we had to launch our most iconic piece first.
Right.
So the little tease of the upcoming collection is red sparkle hearts, and we've launched, they've come out twice already and already sold out. Our third launch has just dropped, but they're well on their way to selling out again. So we're doing the best to meet demand, but they're more popular than we even anticipated they would be.
Yes, that's amazing. I love it. I love it. Well, and it's also that the timing is right. I mean, there's just so many consumers out there that are obviously keen to support Canada, and it's amazing to support Canadian businesses, and, you know, all the efforts being made by local organizations to really support local. I think, you know, you just tie right into that. And I think being such a national brand is just so good to see how fast and how well you are growing, but you're so embedded in the Canadian culture. It's amazing. So I applaud you for all that. So as you look back at your journey and everything that you have been through, not only from a business side, but also obviously that cancer scare, moving your family, changing your business model, re-ramping, all of that. What have you learned about yourself, about your community, about the larger community?
Yeah, I think about myself, I've learned, I've learned a lot more about my own personal resilience. I've learned to really trust myself. And I've learned that, you know, I've often been told this by business mentors, but, you know, the answers lie within. You just have to get to the point where you're confident, you know, in your own internal voice. And a lot of it, often in business, is a gut sense.
Yes.
You know, so I've really become deeply rooted in my own
instinct,
navigation, ability to like make good decisions, even if it's not always rooted in data. You know, often I think you feel like if you don't see the data in front of you, you really question the decision, but you don't always need to see the data, you know, because you've lived it. So I think I've just really become, you know, confident in, you know, my own navigation towards both life decisions and, you know, whether it's raising my kids or guiding the company. I just feel a different level of confidence approaching that. And, you know, when I think about like Hilberg and Burke and our journey and the community that has supported us, whether it's our internal team, which is our first customer, or the customers who shop with us every day, you know, there's a lot of ways that the world tells you to run a business, but I think we've always come back to knowing that nothing replaces a great quality product, an amazing experience, and like really taking care of your customer every day as like the bottom line, you know, whether that's you create an incredible product and you stand behind, you know, how you want to manufacture that product and the partners you want to have and the impact you want to do with the, you know, the outcome of that product. You know, that I think that becomes challenged as you grow your business. But if you stay rooted in how and you don't waver from that, your community supports you too.
Yes.
So I think we've seen that over and over again, which just is really, it feels great and it's exciting.
That's incredible. Good for you. So my last question is, what would be your words of wisdom for our audience?
So I think my biggest thing that I'm passionate about is Canada needs entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And we need innovation, and we need people to take risks. And it's really scary to do that, maybe more than ever right now. But our future economy really depends on it.
Yes.
So if you have an idea, the timing is never perfect. You know, it's better to just start and to figure it out along the way. I think all entrepreneurs have done that. You know, so, you know, I think often as women we question, like, do we have the skills? Do we have the experience? Like, do we have the knowledge? Am I smart enough? You are. Just try, just go for it. Because if you're passionate about something, I really believe in women's perspective of scaling businesses, being leaders, running our community, and their ability to do it really well and to take care of things holistically.
Yes.
So I would love to see more women start and launch companies and scale up, because a really small percentage of female-founded businesses across the country ever scale beyond $1 million. So there's a huge economic opportunity for more women to scale up their businesses in Canada.
Excellent. That's amazing. Well, and you're at the forefront of that. You really are a champion for leadership, a champion for entrepreneurship, for philanthropy, for making sure that everything that you do is really rooted in your values. And if more and more people can follow in your footsteps, yes, there's an economic benefit, but I think there's a much larger social benefit. And I think you are really a champion for women in leadership and what can be done, and staying truly grounded in your own values. And I absolutely applaud you. I am a huge super fan of yours, and I am so grateful for your time today. I know you're traveling across the country, you're growing the business quickly, and so to take time away from your busy schedule is so appreciated. I'm so grateful. And I will always be cheering for Hilberg and Burke, but more than anything, I'll be cheering for you. I really wish you nothing but incredible success, because you really are leaving an amazing legacy.
Thanks, Leslie. It means a lot to me, and thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope this story resonated and gave you something to reflect on. If it did, please share it with someone you care about, and be sure to subscribe so you can continue to hear more pivotal stories involving one question, one turning point, one powerful story. Join me next week with another guest on the Leslie Hawkins podcast.